everybody to the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal studios. I'm Nick Kosmider, along here with Don Williams. And Don, can you feel it? Football season is almost here. Texas Tech players report on Sunday, and with the first day to follow on Monday, so obviously that gives us plenty to talk about. And we're going to start today with the 5 things that Tech needs to accomplish during fall camp. And Don, where do we start?
How about offensive line, where the Red Raiders feel, I think, good about what they have in the starting front, but there is no depth. I mean, virtually no proven depth behind your starters. And Neil Brown told me last week he feels good about the seniors, he feels good about the redshirt freshmen, but in between there's really not much. So they have to establish some depth beyond those top 5 or 6 players across the starting front 5. You have some pretty good pieces, some pretty good building blocks. Adrian Waddle coming off a good season. He's your left tackle. Neil Brown thinks that Deverett Gallington will be better at center this year than he has been at guard in the past. So that position, I think, is pretty solid. And then you have Terry McDaniel, who's been a versatile guy. In the spring, he played right guard. LaRaven Clark, a redshirt freshman, played right tackle. They've decided to flip-flop those 2 guys for the fall, covering up LaRaven Clark a little bit. He goes back inside to guard, and Terry McDaniel goes back outside to tackle. Now, kind of the wild card with the offensive lineman is Brian Thomas, a transfer from Texas A&M who will be practicing with the Red Raiders for the first time on Monday. And he's been a starting offensive lineman for 2 years in that very productive A&M offense. It had Ryan Tannehill and Kristen Michael and Cyrus Gray and all those guys. He's going to be battling with Bo Carpenter for a starting spot there at guard. So offensive line, it's a pretty good group, and they need it to be a good group because they need the running backs behind them to perform well this year.
You're right, and that takes us to running backs. Obviously, the biggest key in the offseason has been the rehab of Eric Stevens, Tech's top rusher from a season ago, even though he missed more than half the season with a nasty knee injury. He's rehabbed well. Coach Tuberville said that the doctors told him this week that Eric Stevens is full go. He's able to compete 100% in fall practice, though the coaches are not going to allow him to be contacted until at least the non-conference games, from what we've been told. Also key to the rehab situation is DeAndre Washington, who's also coming back from knee surgery, so we'll have to see where he's at. A couple other guys they'll be looking for to add depth. Sadell Foster, who's a junior college transfer. He looked good during the spring. Also Kenny Williams, who Tuberville is very high on, the guy that he's compared a little bit to Ronnie Brown, one of his strong running backs at Auburn, who is still in the NFL. And then you have a true freshman in Quentin White, another guy that they're going to be taking a look at. So a couple moving pieces at running back, but the key will kind of be to see where Eric Stevens is at, and we'll be interested to hear from him come Monday.
Yeah, so much feeds off of Eric Stevens. Of course, though, Tech's going to throw the ball regardless of how the running back situation stands. The thing to watch with the receivers is going to be there are literally about 14 guys in that group at 4 positions, and they will be battling for about 8 to 10 spots. You know, at the backup split end position behind Eric Ward, for example, you have Marcus Kennard and Derek Edwards. Kennard being a senior, Derek Edwards a redshirt freshman. If Edwards could really step up and solidify that spot, it would give them the latitude or freedom to possibly redshirt Kennard, which is something Neil Brown would like to do because this group loses 5 seniors, and he would like to redshirt one of those upperclassmen. If not Kennard, maybe a Javon Bell, who's a backup at flanker. I don't know if they can necessarily afford to. He's a really fast guy who could potentially give them a deep threat, but there's going to be a whole bunch of competition in that receiver core. You have Eric Ward, Alex Torres coming back from a knee surgery, an Austin Zuzalik. You have some veterans there, and then it's going to be real interesting and probably fun, I think, for us and for fans to watch the really young receivers. Who among them is able to really step up and be a big threat this year, and which guys in that group kind of need a little bit more time. You also have Bradley Marcus at a flanker spot, who's coming back from playing professional baseball this summer. He was in the Mets organization, was bothered some by a quadriceps injury this summer. Neil Brown says that according to Bradley, the quad is okay now, and so he's kind of keeping his fingers crossed, and that's his expectation that he'll be fine to practice this coming week.
An ongoing storyline that will be continuing to evolve during fall camp is the evolution of the defense. Last year, Tech was among the worst defenses in the nation. This year, Tommy Tuberville brought in Art Kaufman, a defensive coordinator he's been familiar with in his previous stops. They instituted some things during spring practice, kind of going back to the 4-3 defense. Saw some improvement there, but it'll be interesting to see how they continue to evolve. Obviously, some position battles there, but the biggest thing will be to continue to see how that defense sort of understands his terminology, how they start to understand kind of what he expects out of them on that end of the ball. That's going to be a key.
Yeah, and part of that, you could get some help defensively from some new guys. Obviously, in the spring, one of the real talks of spring practice was Will Smith, the middle linebacker from Riverside City College, who was, at least in practice for 15 days, was fantastic and showed some playmaking ability both against the run and against the pass. So he's kind of locked down that middle linebacker position. And it'll be interesting to see going forward here over the next month who else among the newcomers, the guys that we haven't seen yet, really kind of step up and emerge. There's an opportunity, I think, maybe for one of the cornerbacks, one of the new cornerbacks to jump in and join that depth chart. Cornelius Douglas is solid on one side, but on the other side you could have maybe a Bruce Jones from Riverside and Olaf Alimi, who's another California JUCO cornerback who will be here for the first time. So, and then on the defensive front, obviously there's an opportunity there if somebody can step up too. You have Anthony Smith, a real fire plug in the middle, who's out of Spring Westfield, 315-pound kid. Now, Tommy Tuberville told us the other day that he thinks Michael Starks, even though he's a really highly regarded lineman, a 6'4", 300-pound defensive end, he's not sure that Starks will be able to crack this too deep, and they might actually have the luxury of redshirting him this year going forward. It's kind of amazing or interesting that Tommy Tuberville says Starks might redshirt, and Neil Brown told us last week that on the offensive side of the ball, Dominique Wheeler and Reginald Davis, two of the most prominent offensive signees on this team, they might also redshirt just because of how much depth there is at receiver. So it's going to be a fun camp to watch.
Obviously, there's going to be no shortage of storylines as we start fall practice next week. Be sure to stick with RedRaiders.com and LubbockOnline.com for stories, news updates, videos, photo galleries, and much more. For Don Williams, I'm Nick Kosmider. Have a great day.